Some of what I just heard I can readily agree to. Certain things like we're a nation of immigrants, no doubt about that. We need immigrants. We take roughly 800 to 1 million legal immigrants a year. They're welcomed. We also, though, are a nation of laws, and as a nation of laws, we want people to come here according to our laws and abide by the laws. Now, we're working with a group of people. If you call them DACAs, would be about 800,000. If you refer to them as dreamers, maybe 1 8/10 million. We obviously have sympathy for those because a baby brought here in diapers by a person or family that crossed our border without papers and hence entering our country illegally, we don't attribute the sin and the unlawfulness of the parent to the baby. And so there's a lot of that has happened, and there's a general agreement. Maybe not everybody in my political party agrees with this, but I think 80% of them do, that we need to deal with people that are here through no fault of their own and give them legal status. That's the compassion that we're showing for people that broke our laws by their parents doing it, but not the kids doing it. I also didn't ever think we would be here today debating this because I went through the 2013 debate on immigration. The Senate passed a bill. The House of Representatives didn't take it up. I was in the minority at that time, both in a caucus that was in a minority as well as in a minority that voted against that bill because I didn't think it did the things the way that I would do them. Everything died in the House of Representatives. So then 2 years later, I became chairman of the Judiciary Committee. We have jurisdiction over immigration legislation. I could have spent 3 months on immigration at that during 15 or 16 and sent a bill to the House of Representatives that probably would have died, but I made up my mind early in my chairmanship that I wanted to do things that we could get done, and so over a period of the last Congress, my committee voted out 31 bills, all bipartisan. 18 of them got to a Democrat president because I felt in 15 and 16 that why go through that process if it's going to die in the House of Representatives. So even a year ago, after a president was elected that campaigned so much against anything dealing with immigration and legalization of people here, even young people, that he's now come to the conclusion we ought to legalize, I didn't think we'd be having this debate today. And somehow I think members of the Democratic Party didn't think we'd have this debate. I think that they were shocked probably when the majority leader decided 2 or 3 weeks ago when government was shut down to make an agreement to bring this issue up. And here we are debating an immigration bill that, quite frankly, I didn't think we'd be debating. And we're here. And then, of course, we didn't do anything Monday, didn't do anything on this issue Tuesday. I don't know whether we're going to have any votes today. But here we are debating immigration. We have a chance to do what members of the other political party, as advocates for Dreamers and DACA kids, and we have them on this side, but maybe not as vocal or as loyal as Democrats are on this issue. And now somehow we have a difficult time getting the issue up, getting it up and getting something passed. And I offer to my 99 colleagues something the president said he would sign. Now, maybe you don't like exactly what's in that proposal, get it up and amend it. And let's see what sort of compromise we can accomplish. But we are here because the leader said we're going to do this issue. It was something that the minority demanded, and we ought to reach a particular conclusion on it and get something to the President of the United States. Now, once that we knew this issue was going to come up, and we knew that on September the 5th, when the President said that he was not going to continue the illegal approach to the DACA kids that President Obama did, and we have reason to believe through court decisions on older people where they ruled the President didn't have the authority, that he didn't have the authority to do what he did with the DACA kids. In fact, at least a dozen times before he made that decision, he was telling the entire country he didn't have the authority to do it, and then he went ahead and did it. So this president comes in, takes an oath to uphold the Constitution and laws of this country, and he decides that he can't continue what was considered illegal activity by the previous president. This is a congressional decision to be made, and Congress ought to make it. And so we were told on September the 5th, do something by March the 5th. So here we are. Now, I heard from the previous speaker, and maybe a lot of previous speakers, that this is the president's plan. Yes, this is something that the president said that he's going to support and would sign. But I want to say to you the work that a group of us senators have put on this issue over a period of the last 3 months, with about 18 meetings, 4 meetings with the President of the United States to discuss the issue. And most of what's in the proposal that is put before you are things that a group of senators put together. And I would say as our group met, we probably had subgroups of 3 who had different views. And some of them felt strongly about their position. But everybody came together in a compromise that you see is here before us in my amendment. Now, some of those meetings, we discussed these things with the President. And I want to give the President credit for a January 9th meeting he had, where he called together 23 of us, bipartisan, bicameral, where we were able to dial down all the things that you could be discussing with immigration, and came to the conclusion that there were 4 main points we ought to be dealing with. And you've heard of these as the 4 pillars, but let me repeat them. 1 was legalization of these children that were brought here by their parents. Number 2, border security. Number 3, chain migration. And number 4, diversity visa. And we've discussed these things with the President, and I suppose the President probably emphasized citizenship to a greater extent than maybe we did in our deliberations. But we have something that's been put together here by members of this body in a compromising way, none of us getting everything that we wanted, and we're fortunate enough to have the President's backing on this. So I hope that you see this, not as we've heard from the other side, as the President's plan, as if 6 of us that's introduced this, 7 of us, I think, that introduced this proposal, that somehow we just took something from the White House and put our names on it, and it's there before the United States Senate, because that isn't how it worked. So I think I want to address some of the issues that have been put before us by people on the other side. So I want to express, as you probably have seen me expressing already in my remarks so far, my frustration with the current status of the immigration debate here in the United States Senate. It amazes me that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle simply aren't ready to have a serious immigration debate. They've been demanding to have this debate for months. They have even shut the government down to get to this point. And now we're actually on this issue that they've been demanding that we debate for months during this Congress, but for some of them on the other side of the aisle, for years. And then now, when it's time to put up or shut up, they've come up empty-handed. Despite having weeks to prepare, Senate Democrats are still rushing to put some plans together. So let that sink in. Think about this just for a moment. The Senate Democrats recklessly shut down the federal government over immigration, and they did it over plans that they still largely haven't drafted. That should be very frustrating not only to this senator, but most of my colleagues, and it's exactly why the American people seem to have less faith in this process in Washington, D.C. But even more frustrating is that for 2 valuable days, they have refused to allow the Senate to debate immigration measures. Now, as I understand why the Democrats, I do understand why the Democrats are afraid to vote on ending sanctuary cities. Those policies that we call sanctuary cities are massively unpopular with the American people. In other words, the American people feel that when the Constitution says that immigration law is one of the 18 powers of the United States, that no local or state government should be able to interfere with what the Constitution says as the supreme law of the land. Yet I can't understand why Democrats refuse for 2 days to allow us a debate on an issue like sanctuary cities. That amendment would help us keep our communities safe from dangerous criminals, besides carrying out the intent of the Constitution that the federal government have complete authority over immigration. Who could be against an approach to outlaw or to send a signal that sanctuary cities aren't justified when that is how you protect the American people from the criminal elements that some sanctuary cities protect? Apparently, the Democrats are, since they don't seem to be for outlawing sanctuary cities, I guess another way to say it is they could do more to protect hardworking Americans from the criminal element that is albeit a small part of our immigration people that we're talking about. It still creates havoc for people like the Steinle family, where Kate was murdered, as an example, by an alien who was a felon who returned to this country, and returned not once but 5 times. Then, in other words, I have to ask my colleagues whether enforcement issues are legitimately a part of immigration debate. And that's what the sanctuary city situation is all about. Isn't border security more than just throwing money at infrastructure? Shouldn't we be discussing how to reform our nation's laws so that dangerous criminal elements can't inflict harm on innocent families? I'm pretty sure I'm actually 100% confident? The answer to those questions are yes, that those are important issues to the American people. Those issues used to be discussed here. I've already mentioned the name of Kate Steinle, murdered by one of these people. I could add the names of Sarah Root, Jamal Shaw. These people all had dreams too, but they've had their lives ended by felons who had been deported and come back into this country. If my colleagues were actually serious about debating this issue, we'd be discussing border enforcement issues. Sadly, it seems like my colleagues' plans that I've seen so far fall short of that goal. Legalizing dreamers, yes, who's going to argue with that? A little bit of money for border security, there's a lot to argue about there. But not doing something about criminal aliens that are a threat to law enforcement in this country, to the safety of our people, it seems to me that ought to be a part of it. So we get all the people in this room that want to say they want to do something about border by throwing money at it, yet they refuse to actually give our law enforcement the legal tools that they need to protect Americans, because just a wall, or whatever you want to call electronic surveillance, more border patrol, it's all border security. But it's more than a wall, but it takes more than those things to protect the American people. And so I'm here to tell you that it's a tragedy that some people in this body just want to legalize for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years and put maybe a little bit of money into border security with no commitment to the future. All we have done then is kick the can down the road. Worse still, none of my colleagues' proposals are being developed in a way that they can actually become law. Maybe for them, simply passing a partisan bill is enough. Leader Schumer said that this morning, and I was here listening to him. But that's not enough for this senator. This senator actually wants to see something passed into law that will provide real protection for DACA kids. That's why I've introduced an amendment that could actually pass the House of Representatives, and we know the president would sign it. Polls show that the framework a number of us developed along with the president's input is overwhelmingly popular. A Harvard-Harris poll showed that 65% of the voters agreed with our plan, including 64% of Democratic voters. So despite the hyperbole you'll hear from my colleagues, the plan that the president said he would sign is not only popular, but again, is the only plan that has any chance of becoming law. So it's time for all of my colleagues to get serious about fixing DACA, stopping posturing, stopping showboating, and stop simply trying to pass a bill out of the United States Senate that won't get considered in the other body and won't be signed by the President of the United States. The focus ought to be on making actual law. If all of us here in the Senate, particularly those that are in the Democratic caucus, focus on those things, then the choice for them will be very clear. They'll vote for the amendment that the 7 of us have put before the Senate, called the Grassley Amendment. They'll back the president, and they'll provide real security, real certainty to the DACA recipients and the American people. In fact, it's so simple for people, some on the other side that have been promising a DACA certainty for years and some for a few months, but more importantly, real strongly the last 3 or 4 months. It's an opportunity for everything you've told those kids, that you're going to get them legal, even give them a path to citizenship, that you can deliver.